guys, welcome to the Bill Barnwell Show. I am Bill Barnwell. As I've been mentioning, if you're listening to this in audio form as a podcast, well, you can watch it as well on YouTube twice a week here on the Bill Barnwell Show. And joining me on the Bill Barnwell Show today, a frequent guest, although I don't believe he has been a video guest before on the podcast. Always happy to have this man on, one of my favorites. It's my pal, Will Brinson. Will, how are you, sir?
What's up, Bill? I hope you're doing well, man. It has been too long.
Yes.
It is, I think, first video. And, look, I always like to, nothing like my haggard old face on YouTube at like 11:30 on a Monday night after an intense weekend of watching. What was, I would say, I think it was a good week of football. I don't think it was the most thrilling week of football, just in terms of the games. Favorites covered at an outrageous clip this week, like historically, and we got a little bit more of that on Monday night. But still, it's football. Never going to complain.
Yeah. The highest rate, I believe, of games decided by double digits in NFL history in a single week. We had one game decided by fewer than 10 points, which was Jets-Bengals. Joe Flacco and Justin Fields. It was a very fun game, to be fair. That was the lone exception to that rule. A lot of blowouts, a lot of games with backup quarterbacks, including tonight, the game we're going to talk about here, Chiefs 28, Commanders 7 with Marcus Mariota under center. It was not a good week to be a backup quarterback facing a starting quarterback. I believe the only one who won was Tyler Huntley and the Ravens, who did beat Caleb Williams and the Bears. But we're focusing tonight on Chiefs Commanders. Like I said, 28-7. And if you did not watch this game, you would kind of figure, okay, it went as I planned. Chiefs were heavy favorites coming into this game. I don't know what the line was, but I assume
I think it was 11.5 or 12 at close. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So certainly a comfortable line for the Kansas City Chiefs. Coming off a dominant victory over the Raiders, the Commanders did not have Jaden Daniels in this game. Seemed like, look at the final score, you'd say, okay, well, this was a blowout. This was a game the Chiefs controlled from start to finish, and yet, at least in the first half, it did not feel that way. In the first half of this game, it kind of felt like this was very similar to me to a 2024 Chiefs game, where they were heavy favorites, playing a team they should be beating comfortably, and some sloppy football, some missed throws, a Travis Kelce drop turns into an interception, a Patrick Mahomes throws 2 picks in the first half, some sloppy play, and then they make up for it, of course, with some Chiefs magic, turnovers at exactly the right time, some very sloppy play from the Commanders. But then in the second half, the Chiefs did pull away. We saw them dominant on offense. Commanders did not do much on that side of the ball after the break. Had plenty of success in the first half, but that did not extend to the second half of this game. So, Will, as you sit here and evaluate the Chiefs at this point of the season now, 5-3, in second place, I believe. Sorry, they're in third place now still, because the Chargers won. In the AFC West, but clearly on path for another playoff appearance. Which Chiefs team is the real Chiefs to you? Is it the first half Chiefs, who kind of were a mess, or is it the second half Chiefs who took care of business against a team they should have beat comfortably?
I think it's the second half Chiefs team, Bill. And what we saw from them, by the way, how often do you get? I mean, a 13-play, 119-yard touchdown drive that eats up, I believe take up 7 minutes and 2 seconds off the clock. You don't see that often. And to me, that was sort of like not the defining drive, but it was like, okay, 7.5. Chiefs the Chiefs in the first half looked like a team that was really thinking about going to Buffalo next week and playing the Bills. Because I had I'm in the Circa Millions this year, and we had the Chiefs on our thing. We took all like heavy favorites except the Steelers who had, but the Chiefs, it felt like the Chiefs coming out of that Raiders game were going to come into primetime at home against a team without Jaden Daniels. Rashee Rice is back. Everything on the offense is clicking, and they were going to flex their muscles. Now, they didn't do it in the first half, but they did in the second half, and I do think that is the Chiefs team we're going to get going forward. Whatever week it was, I think it was Chris Collinsworth was saying that he was like, we've been told internally, people around the Chiefs are saying that this Chiefs team, despite the record differences, is better than the one last year. And I think that's going to show up, and they definitely are. But like I think that's going to show up over the rest of the season for Kansas City, provided that everyone stays healthy. Better on the offensive line. The weapons, we finally have, actual snaps of Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice on the field at the same time. And, it's probably going to be Kelsey's last run. And the defense is playing great football. So, like, I think, the Chiefs should be odds-on favorites to win the AFC West. And we're going to get a great game next week. I think they just sort of came out a little sloppy at home, maybe looking ahead to Buffalo. I think the second half team, to answer your question, is the Chiefs team we get moving forward.
Yeah, it really felt like watching the first half of this game. The Chiefs just felt like they had better dudes. You saw a lot of the stuff they were doing, especially in the first few drives of this game, were just sort of ISO ball. Just, hey, we're going to line up, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy against these Commanders cornerbacks who have been torched all year, and we're just going to throw at them. Patrick Mahomes is going to chuck up a 50-50 ball, and we think our dudes are better. And they may be better, but they were not succeeding in that element of the game. As the game wore along, I think you saw them lean more into, okay, what can we do? They're playing a lot of zone. What kind of designer stuff can we draw up with Travis Kelce, who had led the team with 99 yards in this game. By the way, Patrick Mahomes, 299 passing yards. Travis Kelce, 99 receiving yards. Really telling me that Andy Reid couldn't draw up a 1-yard completion from Mahomes to Kelce to get them both over. Get them both in the bonus.
And Troy Aikman even referenced it because he kept saying it on Monday night. He's like, look, they don't have a 100-yard receiver. He's like, they don't have a 100-yard receiver this year. Marquise Brown had 99 in week 1, and then Kelce had 99. He's like, so they threw to Rice, I think, on the final third down before they punted. Yeah, and he's like, I really kind of thought they'd go to Kelce there because I expected them to try and get him over 100. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it felt like, one of those, like maybe like B to B plus efforts from the Chiefs. Like you raised their grade because of the second half, but certainly not their best stuff. But I mean, that's the Chiefs. They don't have to necessarily have their best stuff to beat you. And they made adjustments at half. Like to your point, they saw, the zone stuff that Washington was playing. The receivers, whether it's Kareem Hunt, Rice, Kelce, and Noah Gray had a chance for a long touchdown, but actually ran the route instead of ad-libbing. All these guys ad-lib so well that, like, against a zone coverage like that, if Mahomes is moving around the pocket successfully, and, so like Javon Kinlaw got hurt, obviously Washington's, dealing with issues, pass rush injuries. It felt like once Mahomes got some time and got a little more mobile, like moving around and then out of the pocket and throwing from there, that the offense started to click a little bit more as they sort of freelanced.
Yeah, Mahomes was 18-22 for 252 and 2 touchdowns against zone coverage in this game per the NFL's Next Gen Stats. So did find plenty of opportunities when the Commanders did get in zone coverage. I do think something that did impact the game, especially early on, that maybe was flying a little underneath the radar, maybe wasn't appreciated appropriately heading into this game, was the injuries on the offensive line for the Chiefs, where you had Trey Smith, who was obviously their highest paid offensive lineman, their star guard, missed this game. Josh Simmons, who's not hurt, but dealing with the family matter away from the team, didn't play. So it was Jalen Smith at left tackle, and he had a bunch of trouble early on in this game. There were a bunch of pressures through both those spots with backups, through Jalen Smith and then through Mike Caliendo. Why do I always do this?
I think Frank Caliendo could do a good Mike Caliendo impression somehow, right? Like, he can do anybody.
It does feel like that would be, there's probably more higher profile people you could imitate than Mike
Caliendo. Right. I will say every time that they mention like Caliendo, you're like, oh, is that Frank Caliendo? Like,
it does feel a little weird. It does feel a little strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike Caliendo, a lot of pressure on the interior that led to a negative play for the Chiefs. So some weak spots up front. I kind of figured maybe that was a spot that maybe, at least from my perspective, I didn't think about as being a big deal given this Commanders front, but they did have some success getting pressure on Mahomes in the first half, either, getting sacks or forcing some awkward throws. They did get the most obvious intentional grounding penalty I can imagine Mahomes throwing left-handed, doesn't come within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and just love the refs. They still had to huddle up, and you could just hear like the people seething online, just that Mahomes is gonna get away with this the most, and then they flagged him as they should have.
Well, and you know, there's that other I can't remember who got in the backfield there at the end, but like he like threw Mahomes to the ground. When it was like last, and the game was probably out of hand, but the Commanders were like trying to hang around and like, and look, the Commanders came into this game with their backup quarterback, and Marcus Mariota, who's a very capable backup, but he's not Jaden Daniels, you know. Yeah, Dan Quinn made a point, and I think he said it. Did he say it at half, or he talked about living on the edge. I think he said it like going into half. He's like, we have to live on the edge. He's like, they came into Kansas City saying we are going to be really aggressive on fourth down and go for basically everything. Toss, you know, field goals out the window. We're going to try and score touchdowns because we don't think we can beat them, and they're correct. And we don't think we can beat them by kicking field goals. So you know, you lose some scoring opportunities. You know, potentially, right? Like they, you know, they on the KC 40, KC 28. You know, you throw the pick. You know, the first drive. It's just like if things had gone a little bit differently for the Commanders in that on those first three drives, maybe we're talking about the second half is a little more dangerous. But they really needed to have a lead, like going into half to really have a chance here, I think.
Yeah, I think making the Chiefs one-dimensional would have helped, and the Chiefs did run the ball effectively, especially in the second half of this game. I think their running backs had 21 carries for 98 yards. Sorry, their top two backs. I don't know if Rashard Smith did, but he also, I thought, had a solid game. 3 carries for 8 yards. Maybe I'm just misremembering.
He's one of those guys where, like, he's going to be the guy who scores the first touchdown in the Super Bowl. Like, you know, it's like that's just how this is going to play out. You know, converted wide receiver from SMU. Yeah. Right? I think he played running back at SMU, but was converted from a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And then they just get him a couple of pass attempts or targets per game out of the backfield and moving around. And it's just one of those like added wrinkles that, you know, Andy Reid is layering on and layering up and continuing to get ready for later in the season.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned the Commanders being very aggressive, and I don't have any issue with how they approached this game. I think they were right to do that. But you just sort of see the differences between how hot they ran in 2024 and how less than hot they are running in 2025. This is a team that probably had the best fourth down success of any offense in NFL history last year, 20-23 on fourth downs. They score more points off of fourth down conversions than any offense in NFL history. They missed 2 in this game. Not by a huge margin. I mean, that Zach Ertz catch, I thought it was a first down. I was kind of surprised the automated system had it coming up short. I wouldn't have been shocked if they made it the first down. But last year, they were hitting those fourth downs. And so they were able to extend drives. Those drives turned into points. They didn't hand the opposing team short fields. You know, they were hitting on those at a astronomical rate. And it's not that they're not talented, because they are. It's not that, you know, even with Jaden Daniels, they've missed a couple of those fourth downs this year. It's not just not having Jaden Daniels in this game. It's just that's what happens when you ride the lightning, when you are going with a super aggressive strategy. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're going to have stretches where you don't hit on fourth down, and it leads to your team missing out on points, missing out on field goals. I agree with you, and I agree with Dan Quinn. That was the way they had to approach this game. They had to try and get rid of those fourth downs. They had to try and score touchdowns. They were not going to win this game any other way. But they didn't win. And so it does feel... I don't think you regret the decisions if you're Dan Quinn, but I think you just wish you'd had a shot, because this offense played pretty well in the first half of this game, and the defense forced 2 turnovers. I mean, if you were going to draw up a script for how we are unexpectedly in this game at halftime, the Commanders, outside of the fourth downs, hit it to a T.
I mean, you intercept Patrick Mahomes twice in the first half at home on Monday Night Football. Like, that's, I mean...
The first 2 drives of the game. First time in Mahomes' career that's happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was a stat I was trying to bring out of my clearly age-riddled brain. But like, yeah, I mean, first time you get. We've heard, you know, we've been covering this league for a long time, and you know, but it's like every time Patrick Mahomes does something in a big game, you hear a new stat about it. It's never been done before, etc. You never hear Patrick Mahomes did something really bad for the first time ever stat. And like the Commanders got that. And to that point though, like I think their defense came out playing gangbusters, and
Yeah.
the front was getting pressure on Mahomes. You get those 2 picks, and if you do convert those 4th downs, and it is riding the lightning, but if you convert those and you get points off of those, maybe it's 21-7 at half, and the Chiefs can't take this because this is the Andy Reid special, right? Get a lead in the second half, and then he parks, to use a soccer term, he parks the bus, and he short hitters, convert 3rd downs, run the football, and all of a sudden, because we're planning to do this podcast at, after the game, it's 7-7.5, and you're thinking, all right, like this, this could get a little loose in the second half, and maybe the game ends at like, I don't know, midnight. And instead it's like, nope, the Chiefs have a lead and this game is going to be over like before 11 o'clock PM Eastern. And that's exactly what happened. And, it's just a fine line when you're playing Patrick Mahomes and you get the breaks on defense. You needed the breaks on offense if you're going to win this game.
Yeah. I mean, this Chiefs team just has such a larger margin for error than the Commanders do right now. I mean, they threw two interceptions in the first half, some sloppy play on defense. They allow a few 3rd down conversions. That Terry McLaurin touchdown on a weird throw from Marcus Mariota.
Crazy.
I thought he was like it
was like a was it the touch? He had a couple where it was like it's like he was like shooting a t-shirt cannon or something. It was like he like shot it like straight up in the air. It was like, and now, look, there were good throws, great touch throws. There was the one, and I thought this is like an interesting teaching moment. Or not teaching moment, but like you always see like younger quarterbacks. I feel like Bo Nix does this a lot, or even maybe Jackson Dart, where there's a guy who's open, you're getting a little pressure in your face. It's like if you put like a heavy amount of arc on it, there's no one else around him. He's going to catch it to pick up a 1st down. And I thought it was a great throw by Mariota, but then, he had 2 more where he was like lob passes to Terry McLaurin. And the offense played well enough to win for sure. They just didn't get those 4th downs.
Yeah. And then I think once the Chiefs started rolling on offense and the Commanders had to be one dimensional, then, Marcus Mariota's a drop back passer is a different proposition. They lose Laramie Tunsil, their star left tackle, during this game to a hamstring injury. Terry McLaurin, who just came back, didn't play, I believe, in the 4th quarter. He played into the 3rd quarter, but I don't think he played afterwards.
No, he was on the sideline the whole time.
Yeah. So
Marcus Mariota led the team in rushing yards and rushing attempts. Like that's the stat you can look at if you're checking this box score. You're like, okay, it would even lead you to believe like this game wasn't tied at half if Mariota is leading within attempts, right?
Yeah, and I mean, their leading receiver in this game in terms of yardage was Jeremy McNichols. So
that's not great.
This was supposed to be hey, we're getting Terry back, we're getting Debo back. This is now, I mean, Zach Ertz is apparently going to the broadcast and saying, "Oh, I'm glad these guys are back. Now I'm going to have more space to operate in over the middle of the field." I mean, it just feels like it's not their year, and
yeah.
I sort of wonder, I was someone who was skeptical about them heading into the season. I didn't think they would be this bad. I think part of this is the injuries maybe being a little more severe than I would have expected. But is there something you feel like you can go back and say, even beyond the injuries, even beyond the luck, was there something flawed with this roster building process for Adam Peters and the Commanders? Do you feel like there was something that, whether it be at the time or whether it be now, you look at and just say, man, like this was just a fundamental misunderstanding of what you needed to do this offseason?
I think maybe the case could be made that you have this unbelievable rookie quarterback. Mm-hmm. And, we talk about, we talk about it all the time, but it's like you have this window where this superstar quarterback is on the rookie contract. That affords you the ability to go out and trade for Deebo Samuel. It affords you the ability to, you pay Terry McLaurin, and it's like I don't think it's a contract Terry wanted. I don't think it's a contract the Commanders wanted to give him at his age. But you had to give him the contract. You probably should have given it to him just early on and gotten it out of the way instead of allowing him to miss training camp. I know my buddy Zeke, who's a big Commanders fan, lives up in DC, but he texts me nonstop. He's like, Terry's a bum. And there's just a frustration. There is that luck factor. And I do think, I think they treated that NFC title run, which probably, or title game run, excuse me, probably fueled by some of that luck. Because what they had to win over the Bears on that insane Hail Mary, right? Jaden just doing things and winning games, and maybe treated that as, but like treated as like, okay, we have to go all in because we're almost there. But it's like you're probably not almost there.
Right. I think that's the tough part for me, is just, it reminds me so much of the 2024 Texans, where that team greatly exceeds expectations in 2023. They have a lot of veterans on that roster. There's some young talent. Obviously, the Texans have Will Anderson. They drafted really well last year with Kamari Lassiter coming in. They have some really talented players on that side of the football, but you could see, Nick Caserio approaching that like, oh, we should be putting the finishing touches on this roster. Like, we're 90% of the way there. And they weren't. They won a playoff game because the AFC South was abysmal last year, and they, not like they're a bad team, but we're seeing CJ Stroud get hit a lot over the last 2 years. They had to rebuild their entire offensive line. They're probably going to have to do something pretty similar again this upcoming offseason. It just sort of felt like they thought they were in finish mode as opposed to still being in the building mode. And that's sort of where I feel the Commanders found themselves as well. And you saw, it's not just a one-off season thing, right? Like, they go out last year and they trade for Marshawn Lattimore, and they probably needed a cornerback. They didn't love Benjamin St-Juste, but they give up a bunch of draft picks, doesn't work out. They, over the offseason, they trade for Laramie Tunsil. In a vacuum, I don't mind that trade. Larry Tunsil's still a good player. You wanted the left tackle. I think he's been fine this year when he's been on the field. So I don't hate the trade, but now you have a couple more draft picks out the window. You trade for Debo, who, again, not that Debo's a bad player, but Debo's making a fair amount of money. He's a free agent. He has a significant injury history. I don't mind the fit on the field, but now you're paying, I think it's $16 or $17 million a year, and you're going to have another draft pick to go out and get Debo Samuel. And this team only had, I believe, 4 picks in this year's draft. One of them was Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who looks really good as a starting running back. So, if anything, that's a reason to make more picks, to hold on to your roster, your picks more often, because you might be pretty good at this drafting stuff. There might be some guys you're finding who are pretty talented players. But I just sort of felt like they did approach this year as like hey, if we just get a couple more vets in this room, we're going to be great. And I'm not saying they can't make a run. I think they can. They have talent on both sides of the football, but a lot of the guys who were impactful last year are looking a little older than they were last season. A lot of those moves they made have not panned out. They made some curious choices. I think a lot of people were a little confused as to how they moved on from Dante Fowler, who was their best edge rusher last year, and then signed Javon Kinlaw, who's been good this year, but gave them more.
Also has a massive injury history.
Right. And just, like that feeling of, okay, like you guys still need an edge rusher. And then you have Dorrance Armstrong playing well. Now he's out for the year. They could not get a consistent edge rush going in this game. It just sort of felt like they thought they were closer than they were. And they built this roster like, if we just get a couple things right, we're going to the Super Bowl. We just have to take one more step. And the reality is, this was a good team last year, but they were incredibly hot on fourth down. They were healthy, despite being one of the oldest teams in football. They had a fortuitous playoff run, I would say. They run into a Lions team that was just down to the bare bones in the divisional round, and they turned the ball over 5 times. They got blown out by the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, clearly by a better team. And I just feel like there's a lesson to be learned here, whether it's the Texans. I'd even go back to the Giants the year Daniel Jones got his extension, because that was a team where they kind of fluked into some things, won a playoff game, and talked themselves into being, a team that was much further along than they were. They trade for Darren Waller. They're active in free agency, and they've spent years getting out of that hole. The Commanders have a much higher floor than that version of the Giants, but it just sort of feels like this has been a wasted season, and they're going to have to go into 2026 taking a step backwards and saying, okay, no, like we have to get our infrastructure right before we can take that
Yes.
next step forward that we all think Jaden Daniels is capable of making.
Well, and I think like just two good counterexamples. One, you mentioned the Eagles, who just won the Super Bowl, and what they do so well, what Howie Roseman does so well, is draft knowing that he's going to need now he gets star
Yep,
players and he gets good
of
guys at
course.
value and he just drafts dudes from Georgia, but
Georgia, yeah.
he targets right. Just so, did you go to Georgia? You're drafted. Yeah, but like he drafts knowing like Dallas Goedert. Like the Commanders currently have the old tight end Zach Ertz, who's played really well. Like I think he's been a surprise, but it's like the Eagles get guys before they need them.
Yep.
And then the other
Jalen Hurts.
example I would look,
Jalen Hurts is the perfect example, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would even look too at the Bills, because I think when Buffalo that had a similar season, and you can find the Brian Dable connection if you want to that Giants team that made the playoffs. Buffalo lucked into the playoffs in, I think it was Sean McDermott's first year. And they didn't say, okay, we are shoving all in. What they did was they continued to build on the offensive line and to add quality players in different spots. And then they took and they drafted Josh Allen, but they took calculated shots, like the singular trade for Diggs. And that's the difference. Is I think when you plan for that long term and you say we have a window, but it's a 5-year window, because you're probably going to pay Jay Daniels after the 3rd year anyway. But you have this window, but it doesn't need to be like an immediate window. You don't have to say, okay, we had a shot last year. And by the way, all the guys that you named, I think that, they added this offseason. It's like, who's under 30, like that they signed or traded for, right? I mean, these are all pretty older guys. So you're taking an old roster anyway that's full of veterans. You're adding more old guys, but Lattimore, Tunsil, Debo's probably not 30, but he's definitely close. I mean, obviously McLaurin's over 30. Yeah, I mean, like, so you went from, yes, you landed your franchise quarterback who is a superstar, to, okay, you have a franchise quarterback, but your roster is like real old now.
Yeah.
And the only way you can replace a lot of old guys on your roster is with draft picks.
Yep.
And unfortunately, you gave all your draft picks away to get the old guys.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And I don't blame Adam Peters for this to some extent, because he inherited a rough drafting situation from Ron Rivera. That cupboard was not exactly stocked when he took over this roster, but you have to self-scout. And he did. I mean, he signed, 20 players to that roster who ended up playing a meaningful role on that NFC Conference Championship team. But this team does not have a lot of young talent. And frankly, some of the guys who were promising last year have taken a step backwards. Sam Cosby has been hurt, so I don't blame him for getting injured, but he's not, he was a all-pro caliber guard for a stretch in 2024. He's not been that guy yet so far this year. Mike Sainristil, who was really good last season, has taken a major step backwards at cornerback. Brandon Coleman, who they liked up front, lost his job earlier this year and has been inactive. He played today because Laremy Tunsil got hurt at left tackle. It's just sort of a tricky thing. Like, when you go out and nail the quarterback and you get a lot of these veterans on the roster, suddenly you have sort of cut the line. Like, you feel like you snuck into the bar without needing to pay the cover, and you're like, all right, this is great. I just gotta act like I belong. And you can get found out really easily in the
NFL.
And
I think there's probably something to it as well, where you have this wholesale change, like literally sale change, because Daniel Snyder is out. Josh Harris is in. Adam Peters is in as GM after, like poorly run franchise for so long. Dan Quinn comes over and brings, I think Dan Quinn is a really good football coach, and he brings a professionalism to this team. Cliff Kingsbury, who, make fun of his run at, Arizona in the second half of the season all you want, but like, I think the combination of him and Dan Quinn has been very good for that offense. You had Jaden Daniels, and it's like you have all the success in that first year with new ownership and new GM, new coach, and it's like, this team is here to stay. And, that mindset, if we're talking about it, they're thinking about it. And so I think that's that push in, instead of being like, okay, we need to make sure we have sustainability across the board. And it doesn't feel like they have it. And again, the self-scouting thing, you have to know, like, if everybody's if you're really healthy for a season and you convert all your fourth downs for a season,
Yeah.
that's probably not going to happen every year.
No. Maybe in
Right.
Madden. Maybe you just have a trick
Maybe.
play in Madden that works all the time, but not in the actual National Football League. I think we're on the same page about what the Commanders could have done over the last couple of years, maybe what they should have done. But now as we sit here, trade deadline coming up in the next couple weeks, if you're Adam Peters, you're going to be 3-5. The NFC is a little stinky. I mean, it's not like there's any...
It's there's a lot of parity in the NFC, Bill.
Yes,
it's parity. It's parity is what we're... Yeah.
I think there's a lot of teams who feel like, hey, if we get hot, if we make a run, get to the postseason, why not us? And the Commanders, I mean, hey, they could easily justify to themselves, hey, if we just get Jaden Daniels back, we have our star players on the field together for an extended period of time. If we can just figure out the secondary, make a little improvement on the defensive side of the football, we're going to be fine. Or they could say, hey, we made a big mistake and we flew too close to the sun. Let's get some more draft picks, move on from some of these vets, and build for 2026. I have to ask you, what do you think Adam Peters should do? And what do you think Adam Peters will do here as we approach the deadline?
I think when you look at the NFC, and I mean, I agree, like it's a lot of parity. There's, in the AFC, we have the Colts who are playing incredible football. The Patriots look like, and maybe the Patriots may be a really good example of doing, this next offseason. You don't have to go and like shove all in on Drake May. Like you want to build like the Patriots of old. Buffalo, obviously a very good team, and they got back to their ways this past week. And then the Chiefs in the NFC, though, like, all right, the first I mean, the list of the teams just on the outside looking into the playoffs right now: Chicago, Carolina, hilarious, Dallas, Atlanta, Minnesota, and Washington. I think all those teams have their flaws. And to your point, Arizona and then New York and then the Saints. I mean, but like a lot of those teams could convince themselves, hey, if we rip off a couple wins, we can make a run. The problem, Bill, like who's falling off in the NFC here, though? Like the top three teams, Seattle, LA, and San Francisco, like barring, and San Francisco's already dealt with injuries. Barring I mean, those three teams feel like
hurt on the Niners.
Yeah. Who's getting hurt now? I mean, they don't feel like they're going anywhere. Tampa is a not an imperfect team, also besieged by injuries, but they're clearly the best team in that division. Detroit and Green Bay are big problems still. Even the Green Bay kind of got back, and then of course you have Philadelphia. So it's like, I don't know, man. There's not a ton of, I mean, don't get me wrong. You can rip up a couple wins and get right back in the playoff picture. But so to answer your question, if I'm Adam Peters, I'm not packing it in for the season, but I'm not rolling out Jaden Daniels every week if he's banged up behind an injured offensive line with no receivers, so he can now you have no pass rush either, so he can lose shootouts throwing to Luke McCaffrey and you miss the playoffs. And it's tough in the NFL. Like, what are you gonna like? Just be like, all right, we're sitting Jaden for the rest of the year. Fans get angry and then you just give up. I don't think you do that. So I think it's a really fine line. If I were Adam Peters, what I would do is like you said, self-scout. Say, all right, we made some mistakes in some of these trades. What can we ship out to restock the draft picks here and still maybe hope to make a run and sort of try to toe that line a little bit? I think you need assets more than anything for trying to figure it out for 2026, because, even if the NFC isn't like loaded, it's still asking a lot for this team to suddenly, like it's one of those spots where Jaden would have to just go nuclear for 3 or 4, probably 4 playoff games, right? To even like have a shot at whatever you think your expectations were.
Yeah. And certainly it feels like they have to be more realistic than that. But, I wonder if they get calls on some of their vets. And Marshall Lattimore has been a mess. I would expect he's going to be cut after the season. But man, there are so many teams in the NFL who need cornerbacks. Like I'm putting together my list of teams who should be buyers and like what they need. And man, every team I list,
every single team is like cornerback,
safety, cornerback. And I wonder if, we saw the Rams trade for Roger McCreary today. I wonder if there's a team that just says, hey, we can fix him. Let's get him in our building. only have him through the end of the year. You know, we're not going to give up much. Clearly, the Commanders, I think they regret making that trade. I wonder if someone calls about Noah Igbenogany, who was good in the slot for them last year, and it's just, hey, let's get a guy in our building who's a vet who we can plug in, who was solid for Washington last season, who's not playing very much for them.
Has the pedigree as a high pick. I mean,
right. I wonder if someone calls about Debo. He's a free agent after the season. Hasn't necessarily panned out. There's certainly going to be teams who think about what Debo's done in the playoffs for the 49ers in the past and say, okay, like, this is, if we're going to take a shot on anybody for the next few months and like a 1-year rental who could get hot and make some plays after the catch, Debo makes sense. Maybe you get the pick back you traded for him and you save a little bit of cash. Maybe you do get a call on Marshall and Lattimore, just given how many teams just desperately need cornerback help around the NFL. I think you have to be willing to take those calls. I know that you want those guys on your roster. I know you plan on building around those guys. I know you think you have a shot at the postseason, but I just can't imagine guys like Samuel, guys like Lattimore, guys like Ertz, guys like Bobby Wagner are going to be part of this team next year and in the long term. So,
and I would say just really quickly too, Bill, worth noting the schedule for the Commanders is brutal.
No, it's bad.
Seahawks at home, Lions at home, at the Dolphins is a respite before the Week 12 bye. Broncos at Vikings, at Giants, and then they haven't even played the Eagles yet.
They get 2 games against the Eagles to finish up over the final
3 weeks of the season. Yeah, good luck with that.
Not ideal for the Commanders. But flip it though. Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs will finish up here. That is a team that has been aggressive, trading for people in years past. Last year, they go out and get DeAndre Hopkins. They've signed players off of the free agent wire. They signed Terrell Suggs a couple years ago. Last year, they signed DJ Humphries in midseason and then get him out there for a start in their great left tackle turnstile process of 2024. Do you think the Chiefs... I guess it feels like, yes, the Chiefs should be active, but is there a player, is there a position you feel like they should be prioritizing here as we approach the trade deadline in November?
I mean, like we said like off camera, like Breece Hall, and I don't want to suggest that Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt aren't good players, but Pacheco has been, like he's looked a lot better the last 2 weeks, but he's not that, we thought he was going to be, he's a 4th round fantasy pick guy who's going to run the ball 250 times for the Chiefs. They're using Kareem Hunt a ton on 4th down. Kareem Hunt is really old. And then they have Brashad Smith. So it's like, given what the Chiefs can do on defense and how explosive they are in the passing game, I wouldn't hate if they sort of beefed up the running back room a little bit, knowing that when they get leads in the second half, they want to be able to just absolutely get downhill on you. So I don't think maybe that's unreasonable. Some offensive line depth too. Certainly wide receiver and like rest of offense, it seems fine. And defensively, they have all SPAC guys like in place. It feels like.
Yeah, Breece Hall will be an interesting one. I do think there's an element of like him being a more complete player than any of these guys. Like, yes, Kareem Hunt can catch the football, but he's not the Kareem Hunt we saw his first couple of years in Kansas City. He is a short yardage back and a between the tackles guy at this point. Isaiah Pacheco can catch the ball, but he is not the caliber of receiver a Breece Hall is. Smith is mostly a pass catcher. He's going to get the occasional carry just as a change of pace. He's not going to be your between the tackles guy. Breece Hall can do everything. And man, if Breece Hall wins the Jets a game, their first game of the year, with that performance, and that's like his farewell, his sign off to the Jets, and then he goes to the Chiefs, that would be a fun couple of weeks for Breece Hall. I do think they could stand to add some pieces on the defensive line. They've lost Amari Narman-Lott for the year on the interior, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Pretty much if you're a player with a hyphenated last name, it is not going well for you for the Chiefs this year. It's a first-round pick in Anudike-Uzomah, a second-round pick in Norman-Lott, who they weren't going to be superstars, but they were going to be part of the rotation for the Chiefs this year. It's always a spot where I feel like you can always add pieces. You can always get someone. There's always going to be a vet who comes available. If Calais Campbell, for example, if the Cardinals say, hey, listen, we're getting some dudes back. We're getting a Walter Nolan back in the next few weeks. Calais Campbell, we're 2-5, right? The Cardinals are 2-4. It's not our year. You can stay if you want. A lot of retirees do want to stay in Arizona, but if you want to chase that ring, Kansas City's interested. You can play 20 snaps a game. if they can get a guy like that, just some depth behind Chris Jones, behind George Karlaftis, another pass rusher, it just seems like such an obvious place for Brett Veach to go.
Yeah, I like that move, especially because you're talking about somebody like you're not going to be playing a ton during the regular season. You come over, you're a rotational rusher or somebody to plug at the middle, and then what they do is you try to unleash them during the playoffs and crank up a snap count, get them in there more often, get fresh bodies, and you have a deeper depth and ability to withstand some injuries. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see if Jalen Phillips comes available. Maybe they make a bigger move. They try to get someone more significant. It just sort of feels like you have to strike that balance, right? Because with Mahomes, you can't really say this is an all-in year because every year is your championship window with Patrick Mahomes. And at the same time, when you're paying Patrick Mahomes what he's making and what he's going to make in his next deal, when you're paying Chris Jones what Chris Jones makes, you have to hit on those draft picks. We just talked about it with the Commanders, just talked about it with the Texans. Like, you can't keep trading away draft picks. So, if you're a Chiefs fan, you'd love to get A.J. Brown. You'd love to get five or six pieces for this team right here. Brett Veach has to strike that balance. I don't think it's going to be more than a day 3 pick. I don't think it's going to be more than one player. Maybe it's a player via trade. Maybe they sign a guy who's bouncing around like a Mike Pennell from a couple of years ago as we get closer to the postseason. But, it's a tough balance to strike. Like, you don't want to do too much, but you don't want to be sitting here in February saying, man, we should have signed somebody. And it's just that hard balance to strike if you're the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, it's like you can give up maybe even like a late. If we're talking about somebody, like whether it's a Jalen Phillips or like a Bradley Chubb type of like player who, you could give up a day 2 pick if you're going to re-sign them and they're going to be a part of your plans moving forward. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different ballgame. And if you beef it up that way, but yeah, in general, I think the Chiefs know because they have all these expenditures, particularly with Mahomes. And they need to have those core pieces that they're going to look to supplement rather than try to go up top with the trades.
Yeah. Trade deadline approaching. Monday Night Football in the weeks ahead. More competitive games perhaps on the way. But whenever we can have Will Brinson join the show, it is always a blast.
Yeah,
Will, where can people check out the work you do?
Check out CBSSports.com. I'll have a Bet It Now column going up on Tuesday morning for some early looks. I think we had the Chiefs last week and doing that. And of course on Twitter, twitter.com/Will Brinson, and Instagram, same handle as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, Will. Always a pleasure, buddy.